In the course of this study, we will examine the sonship of Jesus Christ. That is, why Jesus is called the Son of God. We'll investigate where the thinking of those New Testament individuals who used this language was based. As we investigate the scriptures, we'll discover that there exists in the Bible a strong underlying set of concepts behind this terminology, which we need to understand and take into account when reading the New Testament. It's not sufficient or good practice to apply the Greek metaphysical approach to the New Testament usage of this terminology. This has, unfortunately, been a far too common practice. Let's look at the overview and breakdown of this study. This whole presentation will be on the PowerPoint slides, which will contain more references than we will have time to refer to. You can refer to these if you wish to more closely examine the ideas presented. We will break this study into 5 sections, starting with the introduction. The historical background. With the victories of Alexander the Great in 333 BC approximately, Greek culture and philosophy overran the world. From that day to this, Greek concepts have reigned supreme in human thought. Greek philosophy is based upon human-centered values and natural wisdom, which interestingly appeals to man. The term metaphysics is the name given to some of Aristotle's writings. Alexander the Great's childhood tutor was the famous Aristotle, an exceptionally clever man who penned many works. One was on nature and it was called Physics, and the book that he wrote after that was later on called Metaphysics. That means after physics. Metaphysics, the idea behind it is that it explores the world beyond the physical and considers meaning, purpose, philosophy and religion, mainly from a Greek cultural perspective. The Grecian philosophical approach was largely rational and mostly based upon finding reason and purpose from the natural world. It emphasized the virtues of the human mind and body, its value system, and metaphysical approach was based upon these foundations. On the other hand, the biblical approach was based upon revelation. That is, that God has spoken and revealed his ways, his will and purpose, both with regards to the past, the present, and the future. It emphasized human sinfulness and mortality, and the need that humanity has to escape this dominion of sin and death. This background inevitably led to a tremendous clash of ideas, culture and philosophy and religion between the Jews and the Greeks. The outcome of this clash between the Greeks and the Jewish culture began a few hundred years before the time of Jesus. This led to much persecution of those Jews who held fast to the words of God, particularly in the days of the Maccabees. However, although the Jews eventually initially gained liberty and independence from Grecian persecution, unfortunately, the Greek philosophical approach did impact heavily upon certain aspects of Jewish thought. In some Jewish circles, a synthesis occurred, whereby Greek philosophy was mixed together with biblical teachings. This is particularly noticeable in many of the apocryphal writings of the period, that is, the books written before the time of Jesus, the works of the Hellenistic Jewish philosopher Philo, who lived in Alexandria in Egypt, and in many Greek ideas that were adopted by the Jews. This Grecian approach gained influence among the Jews by means of education, which should stand as a warning to us. In the New Testament, we see this influence in the way certain concepts are taken for granted. For example, demon possession, a concept that did not exist in the Old Testament writings. Another influence is how some of the leading Jews interpreted the term the Son of God. We see this in John chapter 5 verse 17 and 18 and John chapter 10 verses 27 to 33. In both of these contexts, the Jews sought to stone Jesus for blasphemy, as it says, because thou being a man makest thyself God. There was no Old Testament precedent for their conclusions, and their thinking was likely borrowed from foreign sources. Jesus, who was the supreme expositor, denied their claims and interpretation and directed them to spiritual principles or scriptural principles, particularly to that which referred to the Son of God. You can find Jesus' words in John chapter 10, verse 34 to verse 38. The Bible is in no way based upon Greek metaphysics or any other foreign, that is, pagan form of thinking or tradition. We therefore should exercise care when interpreting its ideas and concepts to ensure that our foundations are based upon what is written and revealed in the Scriptures. We should also be on guard against following a synthesis of ideas, which comes from blending concepts from various sources with the Bible. This is particularly so with regards to this subject we are considering, as the concept of the Son of God was common in both Grecian and foreign ideas, superstitions, traditions, and religion. Each had various ideas about this term. We should ignore these if we are to understand the New Testament teachings.